The Penguin Episode 2 thankfully continued to keep me interested and entertained while also creating a real sense of place with tried and true approaches to storytelling. Welcome to the Smoking Hot Nerds. In episode 2 of The Penguin, we get a number of subtle and not so subtle hints that Oz isn't wildly respected within the Falcone organization or the side he's playing them against, the Maronis. No one seems to respect him amidst their own inner turmoil as the Falcone family attempts to bounce back from 2 major deaths, and each member struggles to make their place in this new reality. We know how dangerous Oz can be, as shown several times during the first 2 episodes, so it's going to be fun to see him rise. We hear for the first time Oz being called Penguin by Michael Kelly's Johnny Vitti, and it felt demeaning and put Oz off a little. It was a great moment and a great exercise in restraint from the writers. It would have been so easy to throw in a line for Oz like, "I hate that name, don't call me that," to further emphasize his feelings in the scene, but rather the choice was made for us to simply see the brief hint of disgust on Oz's face and leave it at that. I have a feeling he'll take up the moniker of the Penguin in earnest, simply out of spite. I failed to mention Oz's mom in the last discussion, played by the always fantastic Deirdre O'Connell. There's something so sad and so mysterious about their relationship, but it genuinely feels like a mother-son relationship, which I know shouldn't be a surprise, but lately it feels like actual chemistry and realism between 2 characters is a hard nut to crack in the current casting climate. But here we have 2 people perfectly cast and executing their scenes at an incredibly high level. Once again, we're getting shown what we need to know about these characters and their ability to be empathetic and sympathetic, even if one of them is a cold-blooded killer. This poor kid. Oz tortures Vic to no end, and the fear that he's experiencing in his new life as the Penguin's right-hand armed man is intense. However, in the end of the episode, Oz's vitriol is warranted, as 2 people died and he was almost found out thanks to Vic's incompetence. The danger in Farrell's Penguin's eyes, contrasted with his genuine care for the character of Victor, gives the audience real questions about whether there's a future for the protege. We got more than a glimpse of the demons inside of Sofia Falcone and what's perhaps driving her. Burdened with absolute grief while also battling whatever crazy is inside her, showed us a more complex character than simply being a badass. Unsettling guests at the funeral and making moms uncomfortable were telling, but not too telling. And for some reason, I really enjoy the fact that she smokes. No one smokes anymore, in TV or in real life, so it gives a little bit of depth to perhaps her propensity to addiction and the need for something to take the edge off of reality. There's a moment in which Oz was sort of pitching himself to her after the truck heist, and she dismissively walked a little faster than his disabled foot would let him. It was such a perfect way to distinguish the 2 characters' status in the scene and in the world. Oz's seeming desperation and Sofia's higher-than-thou attitude brought more enlightenment to the depth of these characters. Both Oz and Sofia are after something, and Oz's willingness to overlook the fact that he was literally tortured by her in order to get what he wants is fascinating. And by the end, when Sofia's true intentions are revealed and she recruits Oz to her side, both characters seem to get what they wanted from the start, but we know neither can be trusted. Darren Tiernan's cinematography continues to impress, with incredibly rich shots and perfectly balanced extreme close-ups. His use of the hard matte on these shots gives the show its own distinct feel. Now, a hard matte is when the cinematographer chooses to close a matte box down on the anamorphic lens, changing the tall, oval bokeh into a more rectangular shape. It makes for a very interesting and very different background than we're used to seeing. It does, however, seem to be a bit of a trend at the moment, but this is where I think it's being used well. One reviewer from Asynchronous Media feels the cinematography isn't memorable or interesting, and I completely disagree. He says, while not poor in its execution, the cinematography and score are often unworthy of mentioning. In a way, I think that means that it doesn't interfere with the writing or the acting, and that the show isn't leaning on any other aspect to elevate the show or make up for its deficiencies. If you don't really notice it, sometimes that's a good sign. He also writes, "The Penguin's considerations for aesthetics is a reminder of television's priorities in storytelling over technical departments." I don't really understand what that means. It seems very convoluted. But if you've watched enough film and TV the last couple of years, you know that a priority on storytelling over aesthetics is not what's happening. I'm looking at you, final season of Game of Thrones. And in another technical realm, I don't get grossed out by much, but the sound design during the moment Oz stabs the prisoner to death was good. Squishy and good. It's been a rough couple of years for acting in TV shows. Probably a result of bad casting and definitely a result of bad writing, or writing that stems from inexperience and less than talented writers. Good actors can do very little with a bad script, and bad actors can sometimes be saved by a good script. These are basics you learn very early in filmmaking, and I doubt that many of the writers nowadays ever took it upon themselves to read True and False by David Mamet, or even Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. However, The Penguin has good writing and good acting, and the icing on the cake is the fantastic cinematography, music, sound design, and sets, amongst other things. Does it have its flaws and occasional moments that make you go, huh? Sure, it's not perfect, but even in its imperfection, it's miles ahead of much of what passes for good episodic television today. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all who have liked and subscribed and commented so far. Very, very grateful for you all.